Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I'm not here with news today, but I am here to clear up some misconceptions that have been surrounding Godzilla news as of late. Two in particular. I just feel these should be clarified before they get out of hand. Both of these particular misnomers stemmed from Toho's recent announcement of a new shared universe for Godzilla and company, and I think it's a good thing to get these misnomers and rumors quelled as soon as possible, lest they create more misinformation than we've already got floating around the internet. So the first one is a relatively minor one. The idea that this new shared universe resulted in the cancellation of Shin Godzilla 2. Now yes, this announcement does mean that Shin Godzilla 2 is not happening, thank God, but it doesn't mean Shin Godzilla 2 was cancelled. You cannot cancel something that was never announced in the first place. People have had it in their heads that Shin Godzilla 2 must be happening ever since 2016. Following the Japanese theatrical release, there was a special event in which a live orchestra performed music from Hideaki Anno's works, specifically the Evangelion franchise and Shin Godzilla. For this performance, Anno released a little statement, saying that he hoped the audience would enjoy this Godzilla film and those to come in the future. Something to that effect anyway, translations tend to vary. But that of course was part of the problem. A lot of people took this statement to mean he was hinting at the production of Shin Godzilla 2. Despite the fact that Toho released a clarification saying there were no plans for Shin Godzilla 2 at the moment and that the comment did not mean that, people never let go of that idea. Then again, we all know from experience how people can be on the internet once they get something in their heads. So this misunderstanding, coupled with the fact that Shin Godzilla was a success and a sequel seemed like a foregone conclusion, meant a lot of people figured Shin Godzilla 2 was just an inevitability. However, there was never any statement from Toho or Anno about making a sequel. So when you get right down to it, there's no way Shin Godzilla 2 was cancelled because it was never announced in the first place. And honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. Even putting my feelings on the movie aside, where could a sequel possibly have gone? We all remember how the movie ends. Godzilla gets frozen in place. Technically not dead, but as close as he's going to get. The countdown to dropping a nuclear bomb on him, which would have wiped out Tokyo in the process, is stopped, but with the understanding that if Godzilla ever wakes up, the countdown will pick up right where it left off and the bomb will still be dropped regardless. And then of course we get that infamous last shot of all the frozen humanoid figures springing forth from Godzilla's oddly phallic tail, which basically was there just to make people ask, what does it mean? And keep conversation going for as long as possible. The prevailing interpretation is that these creatures are Shin Godzilla's fifth form, meaning the next stage he would have evolved into in order to survive. Okay, so with that information, there are two possible directions a sequel could have gone. Scenario A, Godzilla shows signs of starting to wake up, meaning the Japanese government has to rush to find a way of preventing that lest the bomb be dropped, which would probably result in them finding a way in keeping Godzilla frozen. In which case Godzilla wouldn't be up and about or doing anything, so why not just make a movie about trying to stop a meltdown at a regular old nuclear reactor? You know, like the China Syndrome. Or Scenario B. Godzilla wakes up, but he takes on his fifth form, which is the hordes of strange humanoid creatures swarming over Japan. In which case, that's not really a Godzilla movie. It wouldn't even really be a kaiju movie. It might play out more like a combination of Day of the Dead meets Aliens. In either scenario, you're not exactly getting a Godzilla movie as a sequel. And that's just not gonna fly with this fandom, I'm sorry to say. No matter how much you may like Shin Godzilla, a sequel that doesn't actually have Godzilla doing anything or feature anything that resembles Godzilla probably wasn't going to work. So I say, just let Shin Godzilla be its own thing and let's get back to something else. So with that all cleared up, let's move on to the other thing, which, by this point, I am well familiar with. We have people saying that the announcement of this new shared universe means doom for the MonsterVerse. Yes, this old song and dance again. Seriously, I am getting sick of having to repeat myself, but since I clearly have to, listen closely. The MonsterVerse is not dead yet! Again, this appears to be stemming from a misunderstanding. In the announcement where we first learned of that shared universe, mention was made of the MonsterVerse and how Godzilla was licensed for 3 particular American films that have titles. Yet again, people looked at the fact that only 3 films were mentioned with Godzilla's name in them, and suddenly it's the end of the universe again. Well, end of the MonsterVerse, but you know what I mean. Never mind the fact that this announcement made no mention at all that the MonsterVerse was actually ending and that the rights would be reverting back to Toho once the Godzilla vs. Kong crossover was completed. No. Clearly, there is solid evidence that the MonsterVerse is dead because there is nothing said about it at all and people are panicking. Alright, I admit, I'm getting a little aggravated about this, but I'm sick of bringing it up, like I keep saying. Here's a thought. Did it ever occur to you that maybe it would be in Toho's best interest to have 2 Godzilla series going on either side of the Pacific simultaneously? Let's assume you're right for a moment. Let's assume that Godzilla really was only licensed to Warner Brothers and Legendary for 3 movies, one of which was already made and the other 2 of which are in production. The first movie was a financial success. Reviews also tended to be more towards the positive than the negative, but the more important thing than reviews is the money. I mean, heck, why do you think they keep making Star Wars movies? If Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 and Godzilla vs. Kong are financially successful, and it stands to reason that they would be, Toho would be crazy not to extend the license. They would clearly want to keep making that money. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but the Japanese economy is awful. The yen is worth far, far less than the American dollar. Everything over there is expensive as heck, and trust me, if you think your financial troubles are bad here in the States, go to Japan or just look up what it's like over there, and you will thank your lucky stars you've got it as good as you do. Heck, that's why Shin Godzilla, despite being a really expensive for Japan production, still had a much lower budget than Godzilla 2014. This number right here, that is a high budget for Japan. Think about that for a second. Over here in America, that'd be a low-budget movie. Might not even be a special effects movie when you get right down to it. Toho may not be getting all of the money from the American box office, seeing as how they have to split it with their American partners, but I can tell ya, what they get is still considerable. And when you get right down to it, it could potentially be a great idea to have an American series and a Japanese series running side by side than it would be to have one canceled in favor of the other. You see, in order for Toho to see any sort of revenue from the West, the work it produces needs to be licensed. It took months for Shin Godzilla to find an American distributor in Funimation. And once that did happen, it was only scheduled to be in theaters for a week. It got bumped up to 2 weeks when it turned out to be successful, but that was still only 2 weeks in theaters, and with a limited theatrical release, which is about as good as most Japanese movies are getting these days in America. I mean, you'd think if any Japanese movie in this day and age would be getting widespread, proper theatrical distribution, it would be a Godzilla movie. Not even the Attack on Titan movies, whose source material has made the New York Times bestseller list for years now, managed to do any better than a limited run. And the license Funimation has for Shin Godzilla only applies to Shin Godzilla. Similarly, the Netflix license for the Godzilla anime trilogy only applies to the Godzilla anime trilogy. Unless Toho could somehow convince an American distributor to partner up and license every single movie for a series which has not been made yet and isn't guaranteed to be successful, they'd have to go with the standard model of licensing each film individually. That's a lot of trouble. But wait a minute, they've already got a successful American series going, and since that series is licensing characters which Toho owns, that means Toho gets automatic distribution rights in Japan. So really, it's a good idea to let the Americans keep making their movies as long as they continue to make money. Then Toho can use that revenue and put it towards their movies. And who knows, maybe if they keep this partnership going, they can work out a deal with Warner Brothers to distribute the new stuff? I mean, they've already got a partnership involving Godzilla anyway, why not make an amendment? It could happen. Look, I'm a person who believes that film should be considered art, but studios are all about the dollar. And if Toho wants to maximize the amount of money it gets, this might not be a bad idea, having 2 Godzilla series running at once. Look, I know some of you are afraid that your favorite new film series might be dead, and I know there are some of you out there who want it dead because it's not your favorite. But I am telling you, like I've told you 1,000 times before, the MonsterVerse is not dead until we get official, unambiguous confirmation that it is dead. If and when that day comes, there will be no question about it. So take the advice of Douglas Adams. Don't panic. It is my sincere hope that this cleared everything up, so please, please stop with the fear-mongering. We get enough of that from the mainstream news as it is. So, I hope that was helpful. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.